Welcome again. We're still talking about the respiratory system development, and now we'll take a look into the larynx, the uppermost portion of the respiratory system. So, in this section, we'll be talking about the development of the larynx. How does it develop embryologically? We'll talk about how laryngeal atresia and stenosis may occur. This is a developmental anomaly, and we'll see how does that occur, and we'll see what is a laryngeal web and how to treat it. So I hope you're as excited as I am. So first of all, the embryological development of the larynx. So it develops from the cranial most part of the laryngeotracheal diverticulum. It's the same respiratory diverticulum, now just being renamed as laryngotracheal diverticulum. Why is it being renamed as that? Because this is the portion, the uppermost portion of this respiratory diverticulum, and this is responsible for the formation of larynx as well as the trachea, hence the name laryngotracheal diverticulum. So the mesenchyme of the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches. So now the question arises, what are the pharyngeal arches? Pharyngeal arches are actually the mesenchymal proliferations that are visible to the naked eye. They develop in the ventral body wall and help in the development of various parts of the body. So that was an oversimplification, but that is what you require at this moment because we are talking about the respiratory system development. And this is the intro of the pharyngeal arches that you are getting. So the mesenchyme of the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arch, this surround the laryngeal orifice. They are actually anatomically surrounding the laryngeal orifices. They now proliferate. I'll be showing you the diagram in the next slide. In this slide, we'll just talk about how this development takes place. I want you to understand the development first so that when you see the diagram, that settles into your brain, all right? So now the slit-like laryngeal orifice develops into a T-shaped orifice. How does it develop into a T-shaped orifice? Because of proliferation of the components of the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches. Now, the mesenchyme of fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches, it forms completely. It results in the formation of cartilages. Now, there are three important cartilages: the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, and the arytenoid cartilage. And it also helps in the formation of the adult shape of the laryngeal orifice, which was the T shape. So, now I hope you understand this concept. We are moving on to the diagram. So, these are the pharyngeal arches being labeled from 1 to 6. Alright, these are the mesenchymal components of the arches. We'll talk about the fourth pharyngeal arch in yellow and the sixth pharyngeal arch in blue. These fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches, they continue to expand. The mesenchymal component continues to expand, and this slit-like structure changes to adult T-shaped structure. And this T-shaped structure is the adult form of the larynx. So these two cartilages, they help in the formation of three important cartilage: the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, and the arytenoid cartilages, as well as this adult form of the laryngeal orifice. So moving on, the lining epithelium of the larynx, it develops from the endoderm of the diverticulum. So we initially saw the lining epithelium of the trachea also develops from the endoderm of the diverticulum. So as a rule, you have to remember that the lining epithelium in the entirety of the respiratory system is almost endodermal in origin. So the endodermal cells, they proliferate and completely obliterate the lumen of the larynx. So initially, there is proliferation of the endodermal cells that are lining the wall of the larynx, and they completely obliterate the lumen of the larynx. This is not the larynx we need in an adult because air has to pass through. So what happens? These cells which were initially obliterating the lumen now begin to break down. So this causes recanalization of the larynx and results in the production of laryngeal ventricles. Again, I'll be showing you the diagram a little later, but I need you to understand this first. So the laryngeal ventricles are formed as a result of recanalization. So we have two upper pair of vestibular folds are formed, which lie above this ventricle, and a lower pair of vocal folds are formed, which extend anterior posteriorly in the lumen of the larynx. So the formation of ventricle results in the formation of upper pair of vestibular folds and a lower pair of vocal folds. These vocal folds, these are running AP, that is from anterior to the posterior within the lumen of the larynx. So these are the false and the true vocal cords. The true vocal cords are responsible for the production of sound in the human body. Now I'll be showing you the diagram. You have to keep this development of larynx in mind, and we'll see the diagram. Not this one, the next one. So this is the diagram. Though it's a later topic, we'll be talking about laryngeal stenosis in a little while, but these are the laryngeal ventricles. These are the upper pair of the vestibular folds, and these are the true vocal folds here. Alright, going back to our slide. So I hope you understood the development of larynx and how true and false vocal cords are formed. Now moving on. So all the cartilages, they are developed from the mesenchyme of the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arch. We talked about this earlier. The endodermal lining of the respiratory diverticulum is responsible for the formation of the endodermal lining of the respiratory tract. However, the muscular, the cartilaginous, and the connective tissue components are contributed by the mesenchyme that surrounds this respiratory diverticulum. And in the case of larynx, this mesenchyme is of fourth and sixth pharyngeal arch. So the epiglottis is formed by the caudal part of the hypobrachial eminence, and the muscles are formed from the mesoderm of the fourth and sixth pharyngeal arches. So this is the epiglottis, which is being formed by the caudal part of the hypobrachial eminence. This is the thyroid cartilage. This is the laryngeal prominence. This is the cricoid cartilage, and these are the tracheal cartilages. So the thyroid and the cricoid cartilages are formed by the mesenchyme of the fourth pharyngeal arch. This was what we discussed before. Moving on. What happens if the process of recanalization does not take place as it is supposed to be? So think upon it. The process of recanalization was occurring because the lumen of the larynx had been filled up by rapidly proliferating endodermal cells. If the lumen of the larynx is not free or not open, what would happen? Air would not be able to pass through, and that is not compatible with life. However, if the opening within the larynx is stenosed, that is tightened, so it would be difficult for the air to pass. So this is the condition which is known as laryngeal stenosis. Stenosis is tightening of the lumen. So it is a rare anomaly. It can cause by the failure of recanalization. I told you earlier, recanalization is the process in which an obliterated lumen is reformed by the destruction of the cells that are obliterating the lumen. It leads to obstruction of the upper airway. Here you can see this is the tightening of the lumen. In this area, the lumen is tightened. So leads to obstruction in the upper airway. It is also known as congenital high airway obstruction syndrome. So it is the upper part of the airway, so congenital high airway obstruction syndrome. So now let's talk about a laryngeal web. Again, an anomaly in the process of recanalization, but in this case, a web is formed, a thin mesentery-like projection is formed that is attached throughout or at some part of the in the laryngeal lumen. It does not completely obliterate the lumen. However, it forms a small gaping hole through which air can pass. It also provides some difficulty for the air to pass, and hence it is not a normal condition. So let's see. Web-like tissue is present in the lumen. Here you can see the web-like tissue in the lumen. It is not supposed to be present, but here you can see this is the webbing. These are the vocal folds, and this is the webbing. this again and this again. The opening within the larynx has been reduced to just a small hole. Here you can see in the D figure. So it partially obstructs the airway. It is not complete obstruction of the airway. It is due to failure of recanalization. I've talked about this earlier as well. The process of recanalization does not go on as it's supposed to be, because if the process had gone the way it's supposed to be, this figure in A is representative of that. These are the true focal folds, the false focal folds, and there is no obstruction in the lumen of the larynx. It is a wide lumen. However, in this case, there is webbing. So, in this section, we talked about the development of the larynx. We saw how the larynx developed from the upper portion of the respiratory diverticulum, now being called as laryngotracheal diverticulum. We saw the endodermal lining of the respiratory diverticulum giving rise to the endodermal lining of the larynx. We saw the muscles of the mesenchyme of the fourth and the sixth pharyngeal arches forming the muscular and the cartilaginous components within the larynx. We saw how the recanalization of the lumen of the larynx took place and what were the defects in the recanalization, and how a laryngeal stenosis and a laryngeal web affects an individual. I hope you understood it. Keep watching sqadia.com.